Do you recognize what's depicted in this photograph?
Yes.
How do you recognize it?
Is a photograph of the right arm of Mr. O'Keefe.
Did you review and consider this photograph and others in coming or forming your opinions, coming to your conclusions and opinions in this case?
Yes.
In order to come to your ultimate opinion and conclusion, or opinions and conclusions in this case, is it important to take all of the injuries that a decedent may have suffered into account rather than one or two piecemeal?
Now you have to look at the whole picture to understand what happened to the body.
Why is that? What's the importance of that? It may be obvious, but explain that for the jurors, please.
Well, when you're looking at changes and injuries to the body and trying to understand what happened to the body, there are different patterns of injuries on different parts of the body. And by trying to separate those and understand what patterns were caused by certain things, then you're able to put together a sequence of events that happened to the body prior to death.
What role do photographs play in a forensic medical examiner reviewing the medical evidence and coming to opinions and conclusions? How important are photographs?
Oh, those are huge. It's standard practice to always document at the postmortem examination important findings with photography.
Were the photos in Mr. O'Keefe's case useful in coming to opinions and conclusions concerning his injuries altogether?
Yes.
What about the injuries to his right arm?
Yes, those photographs are very important to understand those injuries.
Do you believe that there is a patterned injury on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm?
Yes, there is a pattern injury there.
Have you ever seen, in your experience, either being taught or teaching, patterned injuries as they relate to animal wounds, generally?
Oh, absolutely. Very common.
Do animal wounds include both claws and teeth, dentin?
Yes.
So bite marks and claw marks might be two different types of patterned wounds that you may see in your evaluation, just
Correct.
in general?
Correct, because when an animal approaches the body, there may be damage from the claws and also from the mouth.
Do you expect to see punctate wounds as well as linear abrasions?
Yes.
Do you expect to see certain bite patterns as well?
Yes.
What types of injuries, let's talk about animals in general, what types of injuries do animals produce on the skin of human beings?
Well, animals can produce, if you're talking about, mammals, they can produce injuries from their claws, where you get parallel scrapes of the skin from the claws applied to the skin, or you could see a pattern from the jaw configuration of the animal. And most animals that attack or get in contact with the body have canines, so there's two canines on either side that make paired marks, and that would be called a pattern injury. So it makes parallel sort of gouges, and as the canines move in a horizontal pattern or a vertical pattern, the space between them can change. The other thing you see in an animal bite is you see not only the canines that come out, but depending on how the jaw is applied to the body, you can have little dot-like imprints in sort of a U-shaped pattern, which are from the incisors, the little incisors of the animal. So you look for punctures, you look for paired gouges, which would be the canines, and then you look for arced patterns of little dots, which can be the application of the incisors of an animal bite.
What is an incised wound?
An incised wound is a wound due to cutting from a sharp object.
Would you expect to see incised wounds from an animal bite or claw marks?
No, they don't cause, they're not like knife wounds. They cause more of a scraping injury.
Do you see the injuries that you're looking at in Exhibit 167 Are these more consistent with incised wounds or the scraping abrasions that you just talked about?
Sustained.
Were you able to determine from your review of the medical records whether the injuries that you see on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm were pre-mortem or post-mortem?
They were, oh yes, I can determine that. They were inflicted prior to death.
Do you have an opinion as to whether or not the wounds that you see, the patterned injury that you see on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm is consistent with an animal bite or claw marks?
Yes, it is, very much.
Thank you. May I have just a moment, Your Honor? Actually, Your Honor, may we approach very briefly?
Okay.
May I inquire?
Yes.
You indicated that, in your opinion, the wounds to Mr. O'Keefe's arms were pre-mortem, not post-mortem. His right arm, I should say, were pre-mortem, not post-mortem, correct?
Correct.
What's the basis for that opinion?
Well, a forensic pathologist has to be able to differentiate changes that happen to the body while the person is alive versus things that happen after the person is dead. For instance, there is something called post-mortem predation, where if the body is out in the woods and dead, then wolves and such can come and make, quote, injuries to the body. But we're able to tell from our training and experience that those were made after death. The usual way we tell is that when it's made during life, the blood vessels that are damaged, the heart's pumping blood through, so you can see a reddish color and maybe some blood around it. Whereas if the body is damaged after death, the changes to that body and those, quote, injuries look more yellowish and kind of brown because the blood is not flowing. So that's how you can tell if something done to the body is while the body was alive or whether it was done after death.
Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty that the wounds on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm were pre-mortem?
Yes, they were done while he was alive and bleeding.
You talked about death investigations. As a matter of fact, you mentioned something about what a forensic pathologist's role is in a death investigation to potentially send investigators back out to answer certain questions, correct?
Yes.
Did you see any evidence in the medical records or the medical examiner's complete records that any effort was made to send investigators to the location to see if there were any animals at the location at or around the time of John O'Keefe's death?
Objection.
Sustained.
Do you believe it's important? Well, let me ask it a different way. Would following up with investigators be an important part of any forensic pathology investigation?
No, absolutely. You're working as a team to figure out what happened to the body.
Thank you. We talked about the theme and theory of differential diagnosis, correct?
Yes.
How does engaging in the process of differential diagnoses avoid bias in an investigation?
By after you have your findings and you sit back and think, well, how many ways could I get this finding? And so bias sometimes means, oh, I think it's this, and then you just stop. So that's a sort of a bias where you make a decision too quickly and you don't then stop to consider what other things could cause this same finding. So you have to consider not only what immediately comes to mind, but then you think, how else could we get this pattern of injuries?
Did you engage in a differential diagnosis as it relates to this case?
Yes.
Did you consider whether the injuries could have been caused by a motor vehicle accident?
I did consider that.
Did you consider whether Mr. O'Keefe's right arm injuries specifically could have been caused by being hit by a motor vehicle?
Yes, I did think about that.
Were you able to rule that out?
Absolutely.
So the objection sustained, jurors strike that answer.
Tell me about, well, let me ask it this way. Did you come to an opinion or conclusion as to whether or not Mr. O'Keefe's injuries as a whole were produced by a motor vehicle pedestrian incident?
Sustained.
You indicated that you've done thousands of autopsies yourself, correct?
Yes,
And you've supervised many times more that.
correct.
How many of those autopsies that you've performed or supervised have involved motor vehicle incidents?
Hundreds.
How many of those hundreds have involved motor vehicle pedestrian incidents?
Almost as many.
Have you performed autopsies specifically on individuals known to be hit by vehicles?
Yes,
Have you performed autopsies on individuals believed to be hit by vehicles?
yes,
Have you engaged in differential diagnosis and inferential thinking in terms of developing an opinion or conclusion to a medical certainty about whether or not the injuries that you see on a decedent are consistent or inconsistent with a motor vehicle pedestrian incident?
yes, that's part of what we figure out as a forensic pathologist.
Did you do that in this case?
Yes, I
Sustained.
What are some of the injuries that you would expect generally to exist if a pedestrian is hit by a motor vehicle at speed? Not 1-2 miles an hour, let's say 20 plus miles an hour.
Yes, one of the things you see is a pedestrian is, standing upright and is impacted by this blunt object of a automobile or a van or a SUV. And what you see first most is the tissue is crushed where the projections of the vehicle impact the tissue. And when you crush the tissue, that gives you a bruise. So that's the first part of the pattern of impact. It crushes the tissue, it gives you a bruise because it breaks the blood vessels underneath the skin. And then depending on how much more force is applied, the skin can break.
So I'm going to strike that. Next question, Mr. Jackson.
In addition to bruising, what else might you expect to find in an individual who's been struck by a vehicle at speed?
So let's come over to side.